I'm sorry, my love, Elara said, her voice a silken caress that promised everything but delivered a dagger to my heart. But the board felt Jax was a better fit for the project lead. That day, the sky over the city wasn't weeping rain, but the whole world seemed to wear a uniform shade of muted gray. I stood before the panoramic window on the 26th floor, watching the relentless river of cars below. In my hand, the contract I'd signed just that morning felt like a burning ember, a landmark multi-million-dollar deal, the culmination of 3 grueling months of relentless negotiation, patient endurance, and countless promises. A part of me believed this was it, the turning point, the ascent that would finally lift my team from the stifling shadow of conservative leadership. But another, colder, silent part of me anticipated something far less fortunate. She arrived home late that evening. Her tailored executive dress still carried the ghost of her perfume, and her heels clicked a familiar rhythm across the polished hardwood. She smiled, a soft, familiar curve of her lips, and placed a glass of deep red wine before me. "Congratulations, Ethan," she murmured, her voice as gentle as always. "You're officially the executive manager of our 10-year love project." I merely raised my glass, my gaze sinking into the dark depths of the liquid. 10 years, I echoed. It sounded like an eternity. From the white canvas days of founding our project department, through sleepless nights in our cramped office, to earning recognition as a cornerstone of Viridian Corp. Every step had been intertwined with her, the woman who once swore we'd go to the ends of the earth together. Yet, the very next morning, the new promotion notice was posted. The name listed wasn't mine. It was Jack's, a fresh-faced young man barely 23, with a vocational diploma and a professional record as blank as a new page. As for me, the one who'd just secured the company's biggest deal in half a year, I was relegated to my previous position, as if I'd never achieved anything. The project floor hummed with whispers, a low drone that escalated into open chatter during break time. "It's insane. Why him? What does he have that Ethan doesn't?" Their glances flickered towards me, expectant, waiting for a reaction. But I simply stood, giving a small, non-committal nod, offering no explanation. That afternoon, I drafted my resignation letter. My handwriting was neat, concise, not a single superfluous line. I placed it on her desk, beside a signed divorce petition. No accusations, no blame, just 2 stark papers, a few lines of script sufficient to end a decade. That night, she called. "Ethan, please withdraw your resignation. We need you to stabilize the team, and this year, we could start a family." My voice was calm, devoid of any ripples. "There's no need. We're getting a divorce." A beat of silence stretched on the other end of the line. "What are you saying? Throwing away 10 years of marriage for a promotion?" I closed my eyes, my hand tightening slightly on the steering wheel. The city's lights flared, a dazzling blur against the night. Traffic flowed ceaselessly, but I felt stationary, an observer at a crossroads, watching a pre-rehearsed play unfold. "It's not about the position," I said slowly, each word falling like cold stone. "It's because I refuse to live with someone who would so readily trample on my efforts to uplift another." She didn't respond, didn't hang up. We lingered in that silence, the city's pulse and the faint echoes of our shared breaths mingling across the miles. Finally, I broke the quiet. "My resignation is filed. The other document is on your desk. The rest is up to you." The next day, I still went to work. No one had processed my resignation. No one had called me in for an explanation. The team still needed me to lead the River's Edge project. Their eyes followed me, a mixture of doubt and curiosity, but no one dared to ask. That afternoon, I sat alone in my office. Outside the window, the sunset cast long, blood-red streaks across the glass roof of the ground floor. From a distance, laughter echoed from the adjacent meeting room, her laughter intertwined with the boastful tones of the newly appointed Jax. I sipped my tea. It had grown cold. I set the cup down. Some betrayals don't need daggers or shouts. They arrive silently, legally, overtly even, yet they are potent enough to shatter a man's faith. That night, I didn't go home. The city lights blazed as usual, but I drove aimlessly through the streets, leaving behind a decade of commitment, a proud contract, and 2 pieces of paper. One for the company, one for the woman I once called my wife. No replies had come, but for me they no longer mattered. What mattered was that, in that moment, trust had died. The start of the week brought a heavy silence to the office, as if dust had settled over everything. Since the promotion announcement, my team had grown eerily quiet. The coffee machine still hissed, phones still rang, but beneath it all lay a profound, unnatural hush. Everyone understood. Someone so inexperienced ascending to project director wasn't about merit. In the conference room, hushed whispers fractured the air, soon sharpening into verbal daggers. A young team member, unable to bear it any longer, slammed a hand on the table. "This is crazy. Giving an 18-year-old kid a director position? What does he have over Ethan?" All eyes darted to the door. No one spoke louder, but their gazes burned with a fury that had reached its breaking point. I merely leaned against the window, watching the street below. The discomfort in my chest wasn't about losing a position, but about all our collective effort being reduced to a pawn in a power play. At noon, an emergency meeting was convened. Jax, newly promoted, sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. Ethan's team will all receive a 20% salary cut. The last project put a strain on the budget. This is a directive from above. Chairs scraped as several team members rose in unison, faces flushed with anger. One young woman burst into tears. Her upcoming salary was already earmarked for her family back home. No one could accept this. The door opened, and Elara walked in. Still in yesterday's elegant dress, her eyes were sharp as blades. She listened to a few sentences, then spoke with a chilling nonchalance. "Do as he says." Not a single question about the reasons, not a single glance at the people who had toiled tirelessly for the project. I looked up, my eyes meeting hers. Eyes once so familiar I could read her thoughts. Now they were like a frozen lake. "Are you trying to force my entire team out?" I asked, my voice raw. She didn't answer, merely tilted her head. "You've already submitted your resignation, haven't you? What are you still doing here?" The conference room fell silent. Her words weren't an attack. They were a clean cut, exposing everything. My team members watched me, waiting for me to erupt, to pound the table. But I only offered a hollow laugh. "I'm still here because of one last responsibility. Because this project isn't just mine. It's theirs." I looked at my colleagues, their faces etched with months of exhaustion and quiet endurance. "But if this is how you choose to treat them, I have nothing left to say." Jack sneered. "Responsibility? Or are you afraid of being forgotten?" His dry laugh echoed within the 4 walls. No one joined him. Each face held a different expression, but in their eyes, the contempt for the man in the director's chair had clearly surpassed all limits. That afternoon, HR began distributing salary cut notices. My team silently accepted the papers, but no one signed. Their gazes bore into mine, a silent message. "We won't go down quietly." I nodded subtly, understanding that the undercurrents had become a storm. Elara walked past, stopping by my desk. Her voice was low but sharp. "Don't incite them. You're leaving. Let others handle it." I looked up, meeting her eyes. "I'm not inciting anyone. I'm just speaking the truth. The truth is you abandoned an entire team to protect someone untested and unproven." Her face twitched almost imperceptibly, then swiftly regained its composure. "You've never understood how this company operates." "Oh, I understand," I replied. "I just never imagined its operation hinged on betrayal." She turned and left, her footsteps decisive. The whispers in the office grew louder, increasingly agitated. The sterile white lights in the office felt colder than ever. My team remained in their places, waiting for a signal, not from leadership but from me. My hand clenched, then relaxed. Not yet. The play was still unfolding, and I needed to see its conclusion before my final exit. That evening, I remained alone in the office. The cold neon lights reflected off my desk, still cluttered with unfinished documents. There was no longer any reason to hold on, but I couldn't simply let go carelessly. Outside, colleagues gradually dispersed, leaving behind a heavy silence, like an abandoned room. In the past days, everything had been pushed to the limit, undermined, ignored. My team had shouldered every responsibility only to be penalized. I looked at the resignation letter on my desk, still unsigned, deliberately prolonged, as if they sought to bargain with my self-respect. The divorce petition was also ready, awaiting filing. Everything teetered on a precipice. Stay and torment myself or leave and start anew. I picked up my phone. My finger hovered over a name I hadn't called in ages. Vance, CEO of a rival firm. The man who had, on several occasions, expressed interest in recruiting my entire team. I'd always refused, still believing in Viridian, still believing in Elara. This time I pressed call. He answered quickly, his voice deep and steady. Ethan, calling me now? I presume you've made up your mind. Mr. Vance, I kept my voice calm. You once mentioned wanting to bring my whole team over. Was that offer genuine? He chuckled, a short, confident sound. If you agree, I'll triple their salaries. Your team's talent and track record are well known. I'm not buying individuals. I'm buying an army. A brief silence. Outside the window, the city lights still blazed, but now they seemed like glaring cracks in a wall. I gave a small nod, though he couldn't see it. Give me 3 days. I'll give you my answer. He didn't press, merely said, 3 days or less. I trust you know what you need to do. The call ended. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a long breath. In my mind, faces appeared. Those who had worked beside me, endured pressure, swallowed bitterness due to irrational decisions from above. They deserved more. The next morning, I called my team together. No tense meeting, no grand speeches, just a brief conversation. A silent understanding passing between our eyes. One person spoke up. Ethan, what are we waiting for? This isn't our place anymore. I looked around, seeing that even the youngest faces had run out of patience. A nod, then silence. The decision was made in that quiet. That afternoon, the resignation letter was officially resubmitted. This time, it wasn't a request but a definitive notice. The executive's eyes were cold. Elara said nothing, merely signed and left, as if relieved that an obstacle had been removed. I felt relieved in a different way. A final release, not a defeat, but a tactical withdrawal to prepare for a new game. That evening, I filed the divorce petition with the court. Everything was clear. No more drawn-out conversations, no more false promises, just a piece of paper ending a decade of waiting and opening another path. 2 days later, my phone rang. Vance's voice. I have the contracts ready. Your new office is waiting. I simply replied, send me the address. In that moment, I knew I had left that swamp. Truly, there was no turning back. The new office was on the 28th floor. Transparent glass walls offered a sweeping view of the city, making all the old chaos feel like mere scratches beneath our feet. The morning sun streamed through the high-rises, illuminating the conference room where we stood for the first time as a united front. The faces were familiar, but the eyes were different, relieved, clear, and ablaze with a quiet fire. Vance entered. He wasn't loud or ostentatious with his power. Just a single nod was enough to command the team's silence. He handed me a thick dossier, the new project launch plan, investment details, and a 3-month roadmap. I don't need thanks, he said, his voice deep and resonant like steel. I need results. For the next 3 months, all eyes in the market will be on us. This isn't a place to rest. It's a place to prove your worth. I nodded. We didn't come here to rest. We came to reclaim what was stolen. The team chuckled softly, but their eyes were serious. They had endured enough. Now was the time to channel that endurance into momentum. The first day was busier than expected. We had to reorganize the entire structure, divide tasks, and review new hires. The offices weren't fully complete. Desks still smelled of paint, wires weren't neatly tucked away, but no one complained. Everyone knew starting over was never easy. I told myself this was an opportunity to rewrite my name, not just in the industry, but in my own heart. At noon, Vance invited me into his private office. The door closed, and he poured tea, no preamble. "I hear they're spreading rumors about you, saying you abandoned a project midway and poached staff to sabotage the company." I sipped my tea, offering a faint smile. "They can say whatever they want. I only brought people who were willing to come. No one was forced." He nodded, his gaze seeming to read everything I left unsaid. "I need you to remember this. Here, no one will stab you in the back, but no one will carry you if you fall. If you've escaped one betrayal, don't let it become an excuse for another." "No need to remind me," I replied. "I learned that lesson at a steep price." That afternoon, the team began work on our first plan, restructuring the old, abandoned project system from Viridian. We wouldn't reuse the brand, but we would reclaim the ideas, for they were the fruits of our collective labor. Each blueprint, each line of code was restored, a feeling like piecing together fragments of honor to forge a new mirror. A young team member asked, "Ethan, do you think they'll sue us?" I looked out the glass window. The city was still noisy and distant. "Let them try. We're not taking anything that belongs to them. We're just continuing what was ours." Late that night, when only the click of keyboards filled the office, I opened my personal email. A message from my lawyer. The divorce papers were finalized. A short, succinct line. Procedures complete. No joy, no bitterness, just a clean end. I closed my laptop, took a deep breath. Tomorrow we announce the new project, I told myself. A new name, a new path. Reputation isn't something you beg for. It must be earned, step by undeniable step. The next morning, the team gathered. The company sign was hoisted, bright blue against the gray high-rises. A colleague leaned close to me, smiling. "Ethan, this time we're not following anyone. We're writing our own story." I looked at my teammates, my voice calm but resolute. "Yes, this isn't revenge. This is a return." The celebration for the success of our first project took place in a high-rise restaurant. Brilliant lights reflected in golden wine glasses. Familiar faces around the table beamed, laughter mixing with toasts. I raised my glass, clinking it gently with each person's. All this effort finally rewarded. Amidst the music, the private dining room door opened. A group of people entered, led by the woman I had once called my wife, Elara, walking beside Jax. They moved close, whispering and smiling, exchanging knowing glances. Not just I, but the entire table fell silent. The quiet spread like a cold wave. A young team member blurted out, her voice faltering with shock, "Husband and wife? Is Ethan the CEO's husband?" All eyes instantly turned to me. The wine glass in my hand tilted slightly, the deep red liquid reflecting eyes devoid of any lingering emotion. "No, not anymore," I said, my voice low and clear. "We are divorced." She flinched, turning fully towards me. Her face, moments ago bright with smiles, instantly changed, like a mask torn off under the lights. "I never signed," she stammered, her hand unconsciously gripping Jax's sleeve, as if clinging to a shaky support. The room erupted in cross-current glances. Whispers began to ripple. Past doubts, old rumors, now confirmed by a living tableau before their eyes. A woman who once exuded leadership now became the focus of gossip. I set my glass down, pulled out my chair, and produced from my briefcase a document with a vibrant red seal. "The court has approved it. Your signature, or lack thereof, cannot change my decision. This is no longer about two people. It is a liberation." The air conditioning wafted, chilling enough to make her lips tremble. Jax tried to shield her, his eyes flustered but still attempting to appear calm. His hand circled her waist, a small gesture that only further agitated the crowd. I stepped closer, my gaze sweeping over each face. Former colleagues, new employees, those who had once doubted, now witnessing it all. This is why I left Viridian. This is also why you were all once suppressed. My voice wasn't loud, but each word dropped like a stone onto the table. Elara tried to speak, but her words caught in her throat. Under the bright lights, her vivid red lipstick seemed to crack, revealing a never-before-seen look of despair. She whispered, I just wanted to keep you. I cut her off. Keep me for what? To be a backdrop for these clandestine games. No one laughed. The celebration had transformed into a public trial, where the naked truth needed no defense. Another employee sighed softly. So, all those penalties, all those salary cuts, they were just to clear the path for him. I turned my back, saying no more. My footsteps echoed steadily on the floor, like strokes closing a chapter of a life. Behind me, the commotion gradually turned into whispers and Elara's faint, desperate calls mingled within. Ethan, hear me out. I did not turn back. That night, my phone rang incessantly. Missed calls, texts, explanations, promises. All now just echoes in a locked room. On the table, the divorce papers lay still, the dark red seal a definitive end. Outside the window, the city lights still glowed. I looked down at the surging traffic, sighing. Sometimes the truth doesn't need to be sought. It reveals itself, in the precise moment when all disguises have worn thin. That afternoon, the sky was gray, as if a layer of ash had settled over the entire city. As I left the office, I saw a familiar car parked at the curb. The door opened, and Elara, the woman who had coldly signed off on so many unjust decisions, emerged with a pale face, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. She no longer carried the proud bearing of a CEO. Her business dress was wrinkled, her makeup smudged. Her eyes met mine, trembling slightly, holding a fear I had never seen before. My love? She whispered, her voice hoarse and broken. Are you really going to divorce me? Please, come back and explain to my parents. They can't handle this. I stopped, saying nothing immediately. A cold gust of wind rustled my coat. In that moment, years of shared history felt like a fractured pane of glass, waiting for a gentle push to shatter completely. I never treated divorce as a joke, I replied, my voice so calm it felt alien even to myself. When I said divorce, I meant it. She looked as though she'd been slapped, swaying slightly. Behind her, Jax emerged, his face confused. Gone was the arrogant swagger that had demanded my team's pay cuts. Now only a sheepishness mixed with fear remained. Unexpectedly, she spun around, clutching his arm, her voice raw. Jax, apologize to my husband. His eyes widened at her, then darted to me, as if he couldn't believe the words that had just left her mouth. But her fierce gaze made him flinch. He bent at the waist, his head almost touching the damp pavement. I'm sorry, Ethan, he mumbled, his voice trembling. It was my fault. A crowd began to gather. Some former Viridian employees were among them, their gazes mixed contempt and schadenfreude. I watched the scene silently, my heart unperturbed. How ironic, I said softly, yet loud enough for everyone to hear. You once told me I had to consider the team, protect my image. Today, you make the one you favored kneel at my feet. She broke into sobs, her trembling hand reaching for my sleeve. I know I made a mistake. We can still salvage this. Please come back. It's not too late. I took a step back, evading her grasp. Her hand hung, suspended in the cold air. The street grew noisy now. A few people pulled out their phones to take pictures, a murmur of whispers rising. If this scene got out, it would be the final dagger plunged into her reputation. I let out a long breath, my eyes still fixed on the distance. You should preserve what little dignity you have left. Don't turn everything into a spectacle. She wept uncontrollably, tears streaking her smudged makeup. I just didn't expect things to turn out this way. That's the price you pay, I said coldly. When you treat feelings like pawns. I turned and walked away. My footsteps merged with the traffic, leaving behind the image of a desperate woman and a man kneeling, unable to lift his head. Dusk fell, wind scattering loose papers across the sidewalk like fragments of a shattered marriage. The car carried me away, leaving behind her broken calls. Ethan, Ethan, don't go. But I didn't look back. The city shimmered with a different hue that autumn. The familiar road leading to Zenith Group felt more liberating than ever. Mornings were no longer filled with stifled sighs or scrutinizing glances from the old, dreary hallways where I once worked. Instead, there was the cheerful clatter of keyboards and the collective nods of agreement from my team. After joining Zenith Group, we quickly reclaimed our standing. Our first project launched smoothly. Contracts that had once been forced into other hands now returned, a quiet recompense from fate. During a quarterly review meeting, the room buzzed with excitement, laughter mingling with applause. The senior manager stood, announcing that sales had exceeded targets, market share had expanded, and old clients were actively seeking new agreements. I sat quietly, offering a small nod. This success wasn't mine alone. It belonged to every face that had resolutely walked away with me that day. As everyone discussed animatedly, a colleague leaned close, lowering his voice. I heard Viridian's performance has dropped by almost half. Jax brought in a bunch of deadwood, and the company's in chaos. Many of their major clients are pulling out. The statement hung briefly in the lively atmosphere. A few eyes turned to me, awaiting a reaction. I took a sip of coffee, set the cup down, my voice calm and steady. Once I decided to leave, that place no longer affected me. News about Viridian no longer startled me as it once had. Instead, it was just a passing breeze, carrying the faint scent of smoke from a smoldering building. Their internal conflicts grew increasingly evident. Jax, accustomed only to riding on others' coattails, now held power but stumbled, botching critical projects. Long-serving employees left in droves. Many sought to rejoin us at Zenith Group. One afternoon, a team member who had suffered a salary cut stood outside my office, his eyes filled with embarrassment. Ethan, if only I had listened to you then, I wouldn't be in this situation now. I offered a faint, unjudging smile. This place always has room for those who know their worth. New success wasn't just about the numbers. It was also about the tranquility of looking back at the past. Wounds that had once cut deep were now scarred, no longer throbbing with pain. I no longer dwelled on high-pressure internal meetings or the veiled sarcasm from those who once saw me as a thorn in their side. Instead, each completed project concluded with a small celebration, not extravagant, just enough wine to warm the spirit, enough laughter to dispel weariness. During one such gathering, the warm light illuminated the faces of my teammates. Everyone raised their glasses, clinking them together. Their eyes, once filled with pity, now held respect. Outside, the media began to report on Viridian's downfall. Stock prices plummeted, clients turned away, internal conflicts leaked to the press. Jax's name gradually became synonymous with incompetence, and Elara, who once held the highest seat in that company, was now unusually silent. A colleague quietly remarked, half-jokingly, "Perhaps this is karma." I merely responded with a shrug, not out of gloating, but from an understanding that time has a way of putting everything in its rightful place. Those who once treated others as pawns ultimately pay the price when the chessboard collapses. On my desk, my phone buzzed incessantly with collaboration offers from all corners. Our new project was not only a commercial success, but had also restored the market's faith. The name once submerged in shadows now appeared in economic news, not for scandal, but for achievement. That night, standing alone by the glass window, looking down at the brilliantly lit city, I understood that everything that had happened, however painful, had led me here. No need for resentment, no need to look back. Every step has its price, and I had paid it in full. One late winter morning, a thick fog enveloped the city. I had just finished a strategic meeting with Zenith Group's leadership when reception informed me someone was waiting in the lobby. As I stepped out, my gaze fell upon a fragile figure, trembling slightly, clutching a wilting bouquet of light purple hydrangeas, a color she once adored. Her face was pale, her cheeks hollowed, her hastily applied makeup failing to conceal her exhaustion. "How much do you want?" "I'll give you anything, even half of the company's shares," she whispered, her voice hoarse like someone about to drown. I stood still, hands in my pockets, looking at her as if she were a faded memory. The spacious lobby buzzed with employees coming and going. A few surreptitiously glanced our way. News of Viridian's debt and plummeting stock had long circulated. Her presence here only further tore at her tattered dignity. "So Elara?" I said, letting each word fall slowly, my voice not loud but clear enough for many to hear. "Do I need to remind you that we are divorced?" She trembled slightly, her hands tightening around the bouquet, petals scattering onto the gleaming tiled floor. "I'm pregnant," she choked out, her watery eyes looking up, no longer arrogant but filled with raw pleading. "Please come back. Save Viridian. Save our child." I looked directly into the eyes of the woman I had once shared 10 years with. Somewhere in my chest, a slight constriction, but it wasn't love. It was a lingering regret for someone who had sacrificed everything for her own mistakes. "It's too late." Just 3 words, but they made her hand tremble violently. The bouquet fell completely, petals like fragments of memories swept away by the wind. A security guard politely approached, his gaze asking for my direction. I gave a subtle nod. They didn't roughly escort her away, but gently guided her towards the revolving glass doors. Before she stepped through, she turned back. "Ethan, do you truly have no pity left for me?" I remained silent. That question even she knew the answer to. In the days that followed, the media gradually revealed the full truth. Viridian Corp owed wages, lost contracts, investors withdrew capital. The name that once dominated the headlines was now an empty shell. Occasionally, a tabloid would report on her pregnancy, the father unknown, while others captured photos of her emerging from court, looking gaunt. I no longer cared. Meetings, new projects, and a rapidly growing team now consumed my time. Each morning, I woke up unburdened by the old weight, filled only with anticipation for the future. That afternoon, my team and I stood on the 15th floor balcony, looking down at the city as lights began to flicker on. A colleague smiled, remarking, "Without Viridian's shadow, we're all much more at ease." I held my cup of tea, a faint smile playing on my lips. Without Elara, my life is immeasurably better. The evening wind blew through, carrying the first chill of the season, but my heart felt strangely warm. Not because of triumph, but because of freedom, the most precious thing I had finally reclaimed. The news arrived on a crisp early summer morning. My phone vibrated ceaselessly, a barrage of messages from media, former partners, even ex-Viridian employees, all conveying the same message. Viridian Corp had officially filed for bankruptcy. I leaned back in my office chair, my gaze drifting across the large glass window towards the once proud, towering building that was now merely a name dragged through the mud of newspaper headlines. Headlines screamed, "Viridian owes hundreds of millions. Leadership flees. Jax vanishes mysteriously. Police investigate. Rumors claimed that the young man once so favored had embezzled company funds, absconding with the last investment, vanishing without a trace. Some said he'd fled the country. Others swore he was hiding somewhere in the city, waiting to make off with whatever scraps remained. But no matter the theory, the truth remained unchanged. The ship once called Viridian had sunk. A former colleague called, his voice trembling. "Did you hear, Ethan? The company's in total chaos. Employees are protesting, shareholders are suing, factories are shut down. Jax is missing, and Elara. I heard she had to sell her car and house to pay off debts." I gave a small, grim smile, saying nothing. No gloating, no sorrow. Everything that had happened was the inevitable consequence of a choice made years ago. A choice she had clung to, refusing to let go, even when warned. That afternoon, my assistant placed an invitation on my desk. A summons from the court, for the bankruptcy hearing, to confirm debts and asset division. I flipped it open, catching a glimpse of a hastily scrawled signature at the bottom. The ink still slightly smudged, the hurried hand of the woman who once called me husband. As I entered the courtroom, everyone's eyes turned to me. She sat in the opposite row, thinner than before, her hair devoid of its former luster, her dark vest making her face appear even paler. Seeing me, she flinched, then immediately lowered her head, her hands clasped tightly as if to conceal their trembling. The hearing proceeded swiftly. The total debt, the collateralized assets, the failed investments, each detail read aloud with clarity. When the judge asked for input from the involved parties, I simply replied, "My team and I left the company long ago and no longer have any rights or obligations towards Viridian Corporation." After the proceedings, she waited in the hallway, as if wanting to say something. I stopped, maintaining a sufficient distance. "Do you hate me that much?" Her voice was hoarse, tinged with the scent of sedatives. I looked at her directly. "I no longer have time to hate anyone. I only learned a lesson. Never place trust in the wrong hands a second time." She wanted to speak further, but a group of reporters surged forward, flashbulbs popping relentlessly. Questions barraged her. "Ms. Elara, what is your responsibility in this embezzlement case? Mr. Ethan, did you warn about this before, but no one listened?" I offered no reply, simply walked away, leaving her reeling amidst the crossfire of questions. That evening, my team gathered at our old local hangout, the pub that had witnessed many of our shared moments when we were still employees under Viridian. A colleague chuckled. "Karma, indeed. The ones who once looked down on us have vanished." Another added, "If Jax ever shows his face, he'll be lucky to escape the law." "I heard there's an arrest warrant out for him," someone else chimed in. I raised my glass, clinking it gently with theirs. Once we decided to leave, that place ceased to affect us. They sowed the wind, and now they reap the whirlwind. The night wind whistled through the window, carrying the distant echoes of old days. No need for vengeance, no need for victory or defeat. Time had taken care of everything. My team's reputation continued to resound in the industry. Our newly signed projects now reached international markets. Viridian Corp was just a name, a cautionary tale for those blinded by power and ambition. In my heart, there was no more hatred, only a strange serenity. Sometimes, revenge doesn't require a dagger. It's simply allowing them to sink into the pit they dug themselves. While you stand by, watch calmly, and walk away. The embezzlement case against Viridian Corp concluded after nearly a year. Jax was apprehended at the airport while attempting to flee. Newspapers published images of him handcuffed, his head bowed amidst a throng of reporters. The court sentenced him to 3 years in prison. When he was finally released, no one was there to greet him, save for a haggard Elara, waiting alone outside the prison gates. From a once proud CEO, she was now a woman burdened by colossal debt and a shattered reputation. But the tragedy didn't end there. Their impoverished life revealed Jax's true nature. No longer pampered, he became crude and abusive. Every meager meal, every mention of my name, sent him into a rage, which he would unleash on Elara with slaps and vicious curses. Their damp, rented room became a small hell. Elara, who had once begged and knelt to keep him when he was kneeling before others, now endured his blows, his drunken rages, and his resentful eyes. One rainy night, neighbors heard crashing sounds and stifled sobs from behind their decaying wooden door. The woman who once stood at the pinnacle of power now cowered in a corner, trembling before the man she herself had chosen over her devoted husband. They were still alive, but trapped in their own personal hell, a punishment more cruel than any prison.